There are moments when science stops and something greater starts. Imagine this, a woman, stage 4 cancer, told to prepare for death. She walks into a room not of doctors, but of prayer. Seconds later, not weeks, not months, seconds, the disease is gone. Not because of a new treatment, not because of a last-minute operation, but because of prayer. What kind of power is this? Why does it work for some and not for others? And can you really touch this power right now, even while sitting here, just listening? The answer is yes, and by the end of this message, you won't just believe it. You'll feel it, because healing that takes place in seconds isn't a myth. It's not magic. It's God showing up when you dare to believe. Prayer that heals isn't about fancy words or long hours. It's about alignment of your heart with heaven. When your spirit touches the divine in raw, honest surrender, something supernatural happens. Many people pray to God, but the ones who experience healing pray with God in partnership, breathing in His presence and releasing their faith like an explosion of light. Miracles don't wait on timing. They wait on faith. The moment faith touches heaven, heaven touches earth. I've seen it too many times to count. Blind eyes opening mid-prayer, tumors vanishing before the last amen, bones mending in moments. Not because of a person, but because someone believed enough to receive. Prayer is not a last resort. It is the main weapon. It's faster than medicine, deeper than therapy, and more permanent than surgery. Because when God heals, He doesn't leave a scar. He leaves a testimony. There is a realm where human limitation ends, and the supernatural begins. That realm is activated not by physical strength, not by medical expertise, not by wealth or knowledge, but by faith. Real, raw, desperate, unwavering faith. Faith is not wishful thinking. It's not optimism dressed in religious language. Faith is the invisible bridge between the impossible and the undeniable. It is the only thing that can reach into a situation the world has given up on and change the outcome instantly. When faith enters the room, it changes the laws that govern reality. Time is no longer a factor. Science is no longer the boundary. Diagnosis is no longer the final word, because faith doesn't bow to earthly laws. It lives by heavenly authority. So how does faith activate the impossible? It begins with belief that goes beyond evidence. Faith says, even if I don't see it, I still believe it. That kind of faith creates an atmosphere where miracles feel at home. It's like setting a table for God to come and do what no man can do. There are moments when doctors say, we've done all we can. And in that moment, faith steps in and says, now, let me show you what God can do. It's not arrogance. It's not denial. It's divine confidence, a quiet fire that burns in the heart of someone who refuses to back down in the face of impossibility. Some may ask, why does it happen instantly for some and not for others? It's not about favoritism. It's not about who's more holy or who prays louder. It's about alignment. Faith is not just believing in God. It's aligning with Him. When your will and His will become one, when your heart fully trusts that He is able and willing, something shifts. That's why some people can whisper a single prayer and see healing in seconds, because they are standing in perfect agreement with what heaven already wants to do. Faith is the currency of the kingdom of God. In the natural world, you pay with money. In the supernatural, you receive by faith. And just like money has to be spent to be useful, faith has to be released to activate the impossible.
It doesn't take a mountain of faith. It only takes a mustard seed, but it must be real. It must be living. It must be active. The kind of faith that heals in seconds is the faith that refuses to entertain doubt, even for a moment. It says, I don't care what it looks like, what the report says, or how long it's been. God is greater, and I believe. There is power in desperate faith, the kind that doesn't care who's watching, the kind that presses through the crowd, touches the hem of his garment, and says, I don't need the whole robe. Just a thread will do. That kind of faith doesn't wait to be noticed. It moves, it reaches, and it receives, and when it does, the impossible has no choice but to bow. I've seen it happen when someone simply believed beyond what they felt. Pain in their body, but praise in their mouth. Fear in the atmosphere, but faith in their spirit. And suddenly, without warning, without build-up, without anyone laying a hand, God moved. The healing didn't come through a formula. It came through faith, unapologetic, untamed, relentless faith. And that same faith is available now. It's not reserved for the spiritual elite. It's not locked behind titles or traditions. It belongs to the one who will dare to believe, even when everything says not to. Faith makes a demand on the miraculous. It pulls power out of the invisible and brings it into the now. And it doesn't need to shout to be heard in heaven. Sometimes it's the quietest whisper, God, I believe you can, that unleashes the loudest miracle. So when we talk about healing that happens in seconds, we're not talking about fantasy. We're talking about faith that connects to God's power with such intensity that time bows, sickness breaks, and the impossible becomes ordinary. Faith is not about controlling God. It's about trusting Him so fully that you become a vessel for what He already desires to do. And His desire is healing. His nature is mercy. His heart is restoration. The impossible isn't God's problem. It's our hesitation. But the moment we choose to believe, truly, deeply, relentlessly, the atmosphere shifts. What was unmovable begins to tremble. What was hopeless begins to turn. And what was dead begins to live again. Because faith doesn't ask if God can. It declares He will. And in that declaration, in that single moment of pure belief, the impossible has no choice but to move. That's what faith does. It doesn't wait for permission. It activates heaven instantly, miraculously, completely. Prayer is not a ceremony. It is not a tradition wrapped in routine phrases or whispered duties. It's not about posture, volume, or poetic vocabulary. Real prayer, the kind that heals, the kind that shakes the heavens, is not a ritual. It's a conduit, a lifeline, a supernatural highway between the divine and the desperate. For too long, many have treated prayer like a religious checkbox. Something to say before meals, before bed, or when tragedy strikes. But that kind of prayer, the mechanical kind, is empty of power. It's sound without spirit, words without fire, and that kind of prayer doesn't move mountains. It barely stirs the dust, but there's another kind of prayer, a living, breathing, soul-deep kind of prayer, the kind that tears through the veil of doubt and invites the presence of God to saturate the room. That kind of prayer doesn't rely on structure. It relies on connection. It's not about saying the right thing. It's about being so vulnerable, so surrendered, so open, that heaven recognizes it and rushes in like a flood. Prayer, when it becomes a conduit, carries power from the throne of God directly into the moment of need. It's a channel, an open door, a spiritual pipeline where healing can travel faster than thought, faster than fear, faster than disease. When that kind of prayer is released, it doesn't take hours. It doesn't even take minutes. It takes seconds, because power is not slow when the path is clear. Imagine electricity traveling through a wire. The power doesn't struggle to get to the light bulb. It flows instantly, as long as the wire is unbroken, as long as the connection is solid. That's what prayer is meant to be. Not an effort, not a struggle, but a clean, pure connection between the heart of man and the heart of God. When the connection is clear, the healing flows freely. But the problem for many isn't that they don't pray, it's that their prayer has become disconnected. Prayer without faith is like a wire without power. You can flip the switch, but the light doesn't come on. You can speak the words, but there's no life in them, no charge, no pull on heaven. When prayer is alive, when it comes from a place of complete trust, humility, and expectation, it draws power like a magnet. It says to God, I'm not here to perform. I'm here to receive. I'm here to be filled with something no doctor, no medicine, no logic can give me. That kind of prayer is dangerous to disease. It is lethal to doubt. It stirs the atmosphere with expectancy, and it invites God to invade space, time, and biology. The healing that happens in seconds doesn't come because someone recited the perfect line. It comes because someone prayed with such purity, such surrender, that their soul became a why, open gate for the miraculous to enter. In that moment, prayer is not an act, it is an encounter. Some of the greatest healings I've witnessed came in silence. No shouting, no scripted prayer, just a whisper, a groan, a tear, because heaven isn't moved by eloquence. It's moved by honesty. God responds to the kind of prayer that bleeds authenticity, where the words are soaked in hunger and the heart is wide open. In that space, the body can be broken, but the spirit is full of fire. And when prayer rises from that place, it tears through the atmosphere like lightning. It creates an opening where heaven pours itself out, not slowly, not cautiously, but suddenly. That's why some people get healed the moment they speak a word, not because they knew the right phrase, but because their spirit was in direct alignment with divine power. Prayer is not begging. It is not convincing God to care. He already does. Prayer is positioning. It's making space. It's saying, I remove everything in me that blocks your flow. Out pride, fear, control. And I make room for you to move. When prayer becomes a conduit, miracles don't feel far away. They feel near, tangible, inevitable, because heaven is always ready to move. It's just looking for the path to be clear. We were never meant to use prayer as a religious lifeline only in crisis. We were meant to live in it, like breathing. Prayer is not a tool. It's a connection, not a last resort, a first response. And when that connection becomes consistent, real healing becomes natural, not rare, not surprising, just part of what happens when God touches human need. So, the next time you pray, don't aim for perfection. Aim for connection. Strip the performance, drop the pressure, and speak with the faith of someone who knows God is not far, but right here, waiting, listening, ready. Because prayer, when it becomes a true conduit, doesn't just speak to God. It releases him, and when he is released, healing doesn't need time. It only needs space, and in that space, seconds are enough. There is a sacred collision that changes everything. It happens in a moment, often without warning,
when the human spirit lays itself bare and heaven responds. That collision is called surrender, and when it meets genuine spirit, pure and uncluttered, healing doesn't crawl in slowly. It rushes in instantly. Healing in seconds is not about chance. It's not about luck or timing. It's about alignment. When the heart is stripped of all resistance, all logic, all self-reliance, and says with absolute abandon, I can't fix this, but I trust that you can. That is the moment surrender unlocks the supernatural. Surrender is not weakness. It's not quitting. It's not giving up on healing. It's giving up on trying to control the outcome. It's the soul's way of saying, I am ready to receive without condition. I am ready to believe without filter. And in that place of spiritual release, the power of God is free to move, not gradually, but immediately. You see, the spirit was never designed to carry sickness. Our physical bodies may break, but the spirit, when connected to God, carries wholeness. And when that spirit is completely yielded, miracles don't need preparation. They happen in the same breath as surrender. There are people who spend years praying for healing and wonder why it hasn't come. And sometimes healing is a journey, but there are also moments when the only thing standing in the way is a clenched heart. A spirit that's holding on to pride, fear, or even the desire to understand. But healing rarely waits for understanding. It responds to yielding. There is something magnetic about full surrender. When your spirit finally lets go, when the struggle stops, when you're not trying to figure it out or force it anymore, just fully open, that's when God says, now I can work. Because he doesn't fight for control. He waits for invitation, and the purest invitation is surrender. Some of the most instantaneous healings have come when someone in complete desperation lifted their hands, not in effort, but in surrender. When they said nothing more than, I trust you. Whatever you want to do, I'm ready. It's not dramatic. It's not loud, but it's real, and that's what God responds to realness. When your spirit and your surrender meet in one unified voice, the body takes notice. Something shifts internally. The soul no longer resists divine flow, and the healing presence of God moves through like light through glass. Unhindered, pure, fast. Disease, pain, trauma, they cannot stand in that space because they are rooted in chaos, and healing is rooted in peace. When peace floods the surrendered soul, healing becomes effortless. You don't need to be perfect to be healed. You don't need a flawless record or the right words. You just need an honest heart laid down and wide open. That is the atmosphere where God works best. Not where the strong perform, but where the weak lean in. There's something beautifully holy about the moment a person stops striving. That quiet moment when the striving ends and the trusting begins. When you stop praying out of panic and start praying out of peace. That's when the impossible becomes not only possible, but instantaneous. And the truth is, God doesn't need time to work. He needs space. He doesn't need conditions to be right. He just needs the heart to be ready. The body may be weary. The mind may be racing. But the spirit, when it finally surrenders, becomes the doorway for divine interruption. Think about that for a moment. The very thing you're praying to be free from could disappear in seconds if your spirit and your surrender finally stopped fighting and started flowing together. Because God moves at the speed of trust. And when that trust is full, miracles aren't delayed, they're delivered. It's not always about more effort. Sometimes it's about less control, less needing to understand, less analyzing, less wrestling. Just faith, just surrender, just that whisper in your soul that says, God, I believe you're still a healer, and I let go of everything else to make room for you to do what you do. In that space, healing can bypass logic. It can defy medical history. It can reverse what no one else could touch. Because when the spirit bows low and lets God be everything, God fills that space with everything that He is, and He is healer. So, if you are waiting for healing, pause, not to do more, but to surrender more. Let your spirit breathe. Let it align. Stop trying to earn the miracle and start trusting the one who gives it freely. He doesn't need a process. He needs your yes. And when your spirit and your surrender truly meet, right there in that sacred space, healing doesn't just come, it erupts. It rushes in, and in seconds, everything can change. Miracles are not stories reserved for ancient times. They are not dusty echoes from the past, locked away in the pages of scripture or distant legends. They are real, they are now, and they are happening all around us, often quietly, often unexpectedly, but always undeniably. Miracles are not a memory. They are a movement, still alive in this present moment. Some people have been taught, perhaps even convinced, that miracles were only for the early days of faith, that they were meant to validate prophets or confirm divinity centuries ago. But that thinking limits a limitless God. Why would the God who healed the blind, raised the dead, and calmed storms suddenly stop moving? Why would a loving Father who once restored bodies and spirits become silent when His children still cry out in pain? The truth is, He hasn't changed. He never said miracles were temporary. He never said healing was seasonal. In fact, everything about His nature screams the opposite. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. If He healed then, He heals now. If He moved then, He moves now. Miracles didn't expire. They're just waiting for someone to believe again. And the reason many miss miracles today is not because they're absent. It's because we've stopped looking for them. We've traded wonder for routine, expectancy for doubt. We've accepted the world's definition of realistic and forgotten that faith was never supposed to be realistic. It was always meant to be radical. But the moment you open your heart again, the moment you let your faith rise above your logic, the atmosphere changes. You begin to sense that what you thought was impossible is not just probable. It's imminent. Because miracles don't require perfect people. They require expectant hearts. And expectancy is the breeding ground of the miraculous. Miracles are not just physical healings, though they include that. They are emotional restorations. They are chains breaking, hearts mending, families reuniting, addictions vanishing, minds being restored. They happen in hospitals and living rooms, in quiet corners of prayer and crowded rooms of worship. They happen in silence and they happen with a shout, but they happen. They are not confined to stages or services. They show up where faith is active and surrender is real. The same power that walked among men 0 years ago is walking among us now. Not in theory, not in metaphor, but in truth. And when we dare to believe again, when we strip away the doubt, the layers of disappointment, the fear of what if nothing happens, we make room for God to do what He's always done, the impossible. One of the greatest tragedies is when people settle for survival when they were meant for supernatural living. We accept pain as permanent. We wear diagnoses like identities. We allow fear to define our future. But miracles say, you don't have to live like this anymore. Miracles interrupt the ordinary. They break the rules of nature with the force of divine love. There is nothing outdated about God's power. There is nothing distant about his heart. He is as present in this generation as he was in the ones before, and his desire to heal, to restore, to make whole, that hasn't faded. If anything, it burns brighter, because he longs for his children to know he is near. So, what stops us? Often, it's not his willingness, it's our hesitation. We ask for small things because we're afraid to be disappointed. But miracles don't happen in safe prayers. They happen in bold ones. In prayers that stretch our faith beyond comfort and into the realm of the impossible. To believe in miracles today is to resist the pull of cynicism. It's to stand in a broken world and still declare, I know my God is able. It's to hear the diagnosis and still speak life. To see the facts and still believe for favor. Miracles aren't denial. They're defiance. A spiritual rebellion against the limitations of this world, backed by the authority of heaven. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to force a miracle. You don't have to manufacture one. You just have to make room for one. You don't even have to understand how it will happen. You just have to believe that it can. And in that belief, in that raw, unpolished trust, you invite the supernatural into the natural. You may be one decision, one moment, one breath of faith away from your miracle. It doesn't take years of preparation. Sometimes it takes 1 second of pure belief. Miracles don't work on our timeline. They move on God's, but when faith aligns with his will, time collapses and the miraculous breaks in. So don't relegate miracles to history books or highlight reels from someone else's story. They are not finished. They are unfolding. They are waiting to be seen, received, and celebrated in your life. Miracles are not a thing of the past. They are the heartbeat of the present, and they are yours today. Healing was never about performance. It was never about a show. It was never about dazzling crowds or proving a point. When God heals, he doesn't do it to impress anyone. He does it to express his nature, his love, his mercy, his compassion, his desire to restore what has been broken. Every miracle, every touch, every healing that happens in a single second is not a demonstration of ego, but of deep, holy love. So many look at miracles as divine fireworks, spectacles meant to shock and awe. But that isn't the heartbeat of God. Healing is not a trick. It's a testament. It's a whisper from heaven that says, I see you, I care about you, and I am still near. Miracles are not God flexing his power. They're God revealing his heart. Healing is intimate. It's personal. It's God stooping low and entering into someone's pain, not to prove who he is, but to show how much he cares. He doesn't heal just because he can. He heals because he wants to, because wholeness is part of his design, because pain was never meant to have the final word. You see, we often think God moves because of how desperate we are, but he doesn't respond out of pity. He responds out of identity. It's not just that he feels sorry for us. It's that he is a healer by nature. It's who he is. He doesn't have to conjure healing up like some distant force. It flows from him naturally, effortlessly. And when he heals, it's not to prove his divinity. It's to express his proximity. Healing is God's way of saying, I'm not far. I'm right here. I haven't forgotten you. I haven't ignored your pain. I'm still in the business of making broken things whole again. And that's what makes miracles so beautiful. They're not mechanical acts. They're emotional, spiritual, deeply relational moments between Creator and creation. When Jesus walked the earth, he never healed someone to gain popularity. In fact, many times he told people not to speak of the miracle. Not because he was ashamed of what happened, but because he didn't want the focus to be on the act. He wanted it to be on the author. Healing was never supposed to distract people with the miracle itself. It was supposed to draw people to the heart of God, and he hasn't changed. The same compassion that moved him then moves him now. The same tenderness that reached for lepers, the same attention that turned toward the woman with the issue of blood, the same authority that called dead bodies back to life. That's still him, and it's still for today. Not to fill churches, not to create hype, but to meet needs, to express love, to bring heaven close. Sometimes people think healing is about faith alone, or power alone, or some special touch. But at the center of every true miracle is a father's heart reaching out to his child. A God who is deeply moved by our pain and determined to bring beauty from ashes. Healing isn't the goal, relationship is. Healing is simply the overflow of a love too big to leave us broken. When God heals someone, it is an expression of his character. It's him saying, "This is what my kingdom looks like. This is what happens where my presence is welcome. This is how much I care." And when you really understand that, healing becomes less about the miracle itself and more about the one who gives it. He doesn't heal to gain attention. He doesn't heal to build a brand. He doesn't heal to elevate a preacher, a ministry, or a platform. He heals because it's in his DNA to restore. He heals because when he sees a wounded soul or a weary body, he cannot look away. He steps in not because of applause, but because of affection. If you've ever wondered why some healings happen in silence, in solitude, in unseen moments, this is why. Because those moments are not for the stage, they are for the soul. They are not to make God look good. They are to make you feel loved. Healing isn't a transaction. It's an encounter. An encounter with a God who is not interested in performance, but in proximity. He's not trying to win us over with power. He's drawing us close with tenderness. When he touches a sick body and it's healed in seconds, it's not to impress the world. It's to express something deeper. You matter to me. Your healing matters to me. And maybe that's what we need to remember. That behind every miracle is not a God proving his might, but a Father pouring out his love. So when you witness a miracle, don't just see power, see presence. Don't just see healing, see heart. Because the God who heals in an instant does so, not to impress an audience, but to express a love that never grows cold. He's not putting on a show. He's making himself known, and that is the miracle worth everything. There is a kind of faith that bends time, a kind of faith that does not wait on logic or process or the natural rhythm of things. It's not based on how long you've been praying or how many people are praying for you. It's not about waiting your turn or proving your worth. It's a faith so pure, so unfiltered, so childlike that time becomes irrelevant. Because when faith is pure, miracles don't have to wait. Pure faith doesn't measure. It doesn't calculate or weigh probabilities. It doesn't need guarantees or explanations. It simply believes, fully, innocently, instantly. It doesn't ask how or when. It just says, I know you can. and I trust you will. That's the kind of faith that makes heaven move now.
Not later, not someday, now. We tend to think healing or breakthrough takes time, and in some cases, yes, there's a process, but that's not because God is slow. It's because we're learning to believe without filters. We're learning to get past the noise, the doubt, the fear, the hesitation. But when all of that falls away and only pure faith remains, faith that has no mixture, no agenda, no self-protection, what would normally take months or years can happen in a moment. You see, God doesn't operate on our clocks. He's outside of time, and when we operate in the Spirit, where pure faith lives, we step into His dimension. In that space, what seems impossible becomes not only possible, but immediate. It's not that God is finally ready to move. It's that we are finally ready to receive. Pure faith doesn't demand understanding. It doesn't ask for signs before it believes. It simply trusts because it knows who it's trusting. It's not faith in an outcome. It's faith in a person. Faith in the one who heals because it's in his nature. Faith in the one who restores because love is who he is. That kind of faith isn't diluted by past disappointments or shaped by current circumstances. It is anchored in truth that doesn't change, and when you carry that kind of faith, you no longer ask, how long will it take? Because you know time is not the deciding factor. God is. His presence is. And when you align with His heart fully, deeply, without resistance, time has no authority over your miracle. He can reverse a lifetime of pain in 1 second. He can dissolve disease that doctors gave up on. He can restore joy that's been buried for years, all in a breath. That's what happens when faith is pure. It doesn't wait for momentum, it creates it. It doesn't need a crowd. It can move mountains in solitude. And it doesn't wait for the odds to be in its favor. It moves forward knowing the odds don't matter when God is involved. There are stories of people who prayed for years and saw nothing, until one day something shifted. It wasn't that God suddenly decided to act. It was that their hearts finally let go of everything except belief. All the trying, all the striving, all the questions faded, and they were left with simple, raw trust. And that was the moment heaven touched earth. Time is not your barrier, it's not your enemy, but it also doesn't determine the speed of your miracle. Faith does, not big faith, not loud faith, pure faith. The kind that doesn't need to feel it to believe it. The kind that isn't afraid to look foolish. The kind that says, even if I've never seen it before, I believe it now. So many people delay their breakthrough not because God isn't willing, but because their faith is weighed down by timelines, deadlines, expectations, and disappointment. But when you strip faith of all that, when you bring it back to its purest form, it becomes explosive. Powerful, immediate. You don't have to wait to be perfect. You don't have to wait to understand everything. You don't even have to wait to feel worthy. You just have to believe that God is good, that He still heals, and that He is willing right now. Not after you fast for 40 days. Not after you've prayed a certain number of times, but now. Because when your faith is undiluted, when it is driven only by trust and not by performance, you give God space to do what only He can. And when that kind of faith rises up, when it fills the room or even just your heart, time loses its voice, pain loses its grip, delay loses its power, because God isn't moved by how long you've been waiting. He's moved by how fully you're believing. So stop watching the clock. Stop measuring your faith by the calendar. Stop thinking healing takes forever. Let your faith be pure again. Let it be quiet but bold. Let it be innocent but fierce. Let it believe like a child without condition. Because when faith is pure, time is irrelevant, and your miracle is not far. It's already at the door. We often come to God seeking healing, desperate for the pain to stop, the sickness to end, the situation to change. And while healing is real and powerful, while it absolutely happens in a moment, and while it is something God delights in giving, it is not the highest gift. It is not the main prize. Healing is a byproduct. It is the overflow, the main gift is Him. If you come to God just for healing, you may receive it. But if you come to Him for Him, if your heart is after His presence, His face, His love, then you receive something far greater. Healing is temporary. We live in a world where bodies age, where trials come, where life is fragile. But intimacy with God, that's eternal, that's unshakable, that's the true miracle. You see, when the presence of God enters a room, yes, sickness leaves. Yes, bodies are restored. Yes, minds are healed. But those are signs of something deeper. They are signs that He is here. And when He is here, everything changes. Not just your body, not just your circumstances. Your soul, your identity, your understanding of love. Healing is the ripple, but the presence is the ocean. So often people chase the miracle instead of the miracle giver. They want the healing but don't realize the greatest gift isn't what God can do for them. It's who He is to them. His love is more powerful than any physical change. His peace is more healing than any medicine. His presence fills places in your heart that even the most complete physical restoration never could. There are people who have been healed in their bodies but are still broken in their souls. And there are others who, even as they wait for a miracle, carry a deep joy and strength because they've encountered the healer, not just the healing. That's the difference. That's the shift. When you realize that His presence is the treasure, not just the touch. Healing is beautiful. It's a testimony. It brings glory to God and builds faith in others. But if you stop at the healing, you've missed the heart of it. Because healing is not the destination. It's a signpost pointing to the real prize, a relationship with the living God. When you encounter Him, not just His power, everything inside you is realigned. You begin to realize that even if the healing hasn't happened yet, you already have the greatest gift. You already have the one who holds your future, your body, your heart in His hands. And that realization brings a kind of peace that can't be shaken, a kind of wholeness that sickness can't steal. Some of the most powerful moments are not when healing happens in seconds, but when someone lifts their hands in surrender, even in pain, and says, God, I want you more than I want relief. I want your presence more than I want comfort. I want to know you, not just what you can do. That is pure worship. That is faith refined by fire. And that is where God meets us with a closeness that no miracle can match. He never said we wouldn't face pain. He never promised a life without struggle. But He did promise His presence in the midst of it. He did promise to be close to the broken-hearted. And sometimes the healing we don't see on the outside is already happening on the inside. The quiet moments when He speaks peace over your soul, when He carries your heart through what should have crushed you. So yes, pray for healing, believe for it, expect it, but never let the healing become the idol. Never let the miracle distract you from the one who gives it, because when you have Him, you have everything. And when you truly understand that, the pressure falls away. You stop striving. You stop begging. You start resting. Resting in the truth that you're already held, already seen, already loved. Healing may come in a moment or in a journey. But the presence of God, that's available now. That's the gift that never fades. That's the encounter that will carry you through every season of life. It's not just about being made whole in your body. It's about being made whole in your spirit, being reconnected to the heart of the one who made you. That's the true healing, the deeper healing, the kind that doesn't just change how you feel, it changes who you are. So come to him, not just for what he can give, but for who he is. Let the miracle be the evidence, not the aim. Let the healing be the echo, not the center. Because in the end, what your soul needs most is not a miracle. It's God himself. And when you have him, healing flows, not just into your body, but into every corner of your life. So why are you here today? Because something in you is hungry for more than what the natural world has offered. You want to believe that it can be gone in seconds. You want to believe that you don't have to live with this pain, this diagnosis, this fear, and you don't. Right now, wherever you are, lift your heart, not just your hands. Because healing doesn't need your logic. It needs your yes. The prayer that heals in seconds isn't far away. It's right here, right now, and it's waiting for your faith to say, I receive it.